From the Gulf States newsroom, this is the Gulf States Gumbo, your weekly serving of stories from Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. I'm senior reporter Drew Hawkins, chopping it up this week. The Gulf South has been in the news a lot lately. Redistricting, voting rights, abortion access, the environment, whether or not New Orleans will be inhabitable in the next century, which is something that some of us looking to buy a house in the city are really just loving. But with so much coverage at the national level, our region is often misunderstood and misrepresented. That's why it's so important to have voices in the media who have been paying attention for a long time and with the care of someone who calls it home. Jarvis DeBerry is one of those voices. He's a journalist, columnist, and poet, originally from Mississippi, whose work has taken him from local outlets like the Times-Picayune in New Orleans and Louisiana Illuminator to the national level at MS Now, where he's now the opinion editor. So I thought it would be good to zoom out a bit, but, with a local lens. So I sat down with DeBerry to talk through what's happening right now and his approach to journalism. Hey, Jarvis, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Drew. I appreciate it.
So I know you've been covering this region for many years now, and there's a lot happening right now. So I think let's just jump right into it. Let's just start off right with what's happening right now with Calvin Duncan. Can you walk us through where we are, how we got here, and maybe what it means?
Calvin Duncan has one of the more remarkable stories you'll hear in the United States. He was a young black teenager in New Orleans who was arrested and eventually convicted of murder, sent to Louisiana State Penitentiary, better known as Angola, was there for, I think, 28 years, and finally won his freedom. He always said that he didn't do it, that this was not a crime that he committed. He won his freedom in large part by being a jailhouse lawyer, taught himself law in the prison libraries, and not only helped secure his own freedom, but helped win the freedom of other people who were in the same situation that he was. After getting out of prison, he did everything that he could to continue helping people get out, went to law school, became a lawyer himself, got the final declaration that he was truly innocent and got the courts to say that he was an exonerated person. Last year ran for clerk of criminal court in New Orleans and ran on the platform that criminal records are really important, that he was frustrated often, and other people who have been locked up have been frustrated by their inability to get proper records, convinced the people in New Orleans to elect him, only to have the Louisiana legislature respond by saying that, we're just going to block that office. We're going to eliminate that office altogether. There just seems to be a personal vendetta if you are observing this case. For example, the Louisiana Attorney General, Liz Morrell, has challenged the claim that he is truly exonerated and innocent, and his opponent in last year's race raised questions about whether he was innocent or not. Those seem to be totally out of the blue questions about his exoneration. It doesn't seem to be grounded in any type of fact. But the legislature has ended and eliminated his position. The latest is that the city of New Orleans is demanding a special election, because what the Louisiana legislature did was say that we're going to take the criminal district court clerk position, and give that to the civil clerk.
And I wonder if we could talk a little bit more about this idea of delegitimizing Duncan's exoneration. You mentioned earlier that it seems to be coming out of the blue, but here we have a black man who was found that he was wrongfully convicted, and a court found this. In your mind, is this maybe really just dirty politics in a way, or is there something deeper there?
I don't think you should ever underestimate the dirtiness of the politics in Louisiana, first and foremost. And I think dirty politics is enough in and of itself to explain it, as long as we are keeping the race component in there, because I do think that is a part of this. At the same time, I do think that the Republican leaders in Louisiana have a stake in not being reminded of how flawed the criminal justice system in the state is. And I think that every day that Calvin Duncan would be in office would be a reminder that Louisiana has had, I think, more exonerations than any other state in the country when we're speaking of people who have been sent to death row, and that New Orleans has had more exonerations than any other city. And so when we have people such as Liz Morrell and Governor Jeff Landry or others who are arguing against Calvin Duncan's innocence, they're really asking the people of Louisiana to have a faith in the criminal justice system that is unwarranted, and a faith that is directly contradicted by the statistics that are related to exonerations. And it's my guess that the state of Louisiana doesn't want the world to be reminded of that. And Calvin Duncan's election would indeed remind people of that.
Really along the same lines of historic inequity, disproportionate access and outcomes, we've also got the Callais ruling. But I wonder if you could break down for us this ruling, what it could mean for voting rights, and where are we today, and where do you think this could go?
It really depends on how you think of voting rights. My 13-year-old was listening to your station's reporting on this and said, does this mean that Black people won't be able to vote? And I explained, no, it doesn't mean that Black people won't be able to vote, but it does mean that Black people will have almost no chance of electing someone who Black people collectively thinks represents their interests. What the Voting Rights Act understood, I should say, is that giving Black people a right to vote when they would have nobody to vote for who would represent their interests would be a colossal waste of time. And so the Voting Rights Act also required, prevented and prohibited the white power structure from so diluting the Black vote by splitting populations in such a way that they would always be outnumbered. And so it did that in recognition that if voting is to mean anything, it is also to mean that you have some reasonable chance of electing people who are aligned with your interests. There are lots of nuances to this story. Suffice to say that the Republicans are in charge of Louisiana. The Republicans, including Jeff Landry, the governor, helped draw this map that would create a second congressional district. I've talked to people including Ashley Shelton, who is the CEO of the Louisiana Power Coalition, and she said that they were offering and suggesting a map that was much more nuanced and not as problematic as this particular map that was drawn by Jeff Landry and other Republicans were. Part of the thinking that one of the reasons they drew this map this way was to advantage Julia Letlow, who's in North Louisiana, and to kind of shove off of the picture Garrett Graves, who was a representative from Baton Rouge. There were all these different competing and overlapping political interests that went into this particular map. But instead of like a real cohesive group of Black voters in a particular district, they picked up voters from North Louisiana all the way down into Baton Rouge. And so, yeah, I think most people would agree that the map looks ugly. But it's really important to make the point that Black people did not create this map, that Democrats did not create this map, that they did not have the power to create this map. And I would not find it odd if people were wondering that the map was created in such a way just to be struck down by the Supreme Court and just to give the Supreme Court another opportunity to further gut the Voting Rights Act. But as we stand now, the Louisiana legislature is rushing to do what Tennessee did. Tennessee legislature eliminated by breaking into three the majority Black congressional districts centered around Memphis. And it is highly likely that the people in Louisiana are going to see a different congressional map. But what it means for Black voters in Louisiana is that we just lost a whole lot of Black political strength. And that is not an accident, but it seems to be the intent that's been driving the creation of these maps.
Shortly after the Callais ruling, Mississippi's Governor Tate Reeves tweeted, "First Dobbs, now Callais, just Mississippi and Louisiana down here saving our country." And I think, there could be a good argument to make that the Gulf South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, in many ways is the reason voting rights were, established in the first place. And, is it fair to say that we're seeing this region essentially lead the reversal of these protections?
I think it's safe to say the Supreme Court is leading the reversal. And I think it's safe to say that the leaders of Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana are cheering that. They couldn't do this but for a Supreme Court that wanted this to be done. And Chief Justice John Roberts, this has been a mission of his since he was a young lawyer in the Reagan administration in the 1980s. To weaken, if not completely kill, the Voting Rights Act. I find it, as someone who grew up in Mississippi and has lived in Louisiana, one of the most awful Supreme Court rulings in my lifetime. And this changes everything. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, but I've been thinking a lot about how the Great Migration, Black people moving from the South to parts west and north of the South. I think the Voting Rights Act did a lot to end that migration. It gave Black people the sense that you don't have to leave where you are in order to have some type of political strength and to have some type of civic participation. I'm not going to go so far as to say, you're going to see a second Great Migration or anything like that. But I do think that there are Black people who have to be doing some serious considerations right now about do we belong? Because we are looking right now at Republican-controlled legislatures across the South, writing Black people out of all political power. And that cannot be stressed enough, how damaging that is. Stacey Abrams wrote a piece for MS Now that we published a day after this ruling, and she pointed out that the Voting Rights Act ended Jim Crow. So if you end the Voting Rights Act, where does that leave us?
Yeah, and you've covered this region for many years. Local outlets like Times-Picayune, like you mentioned earlier, also Louisiana Illuminator, and now you're at MS Now. Yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts on how the Gulf South, does it look different when you're writing for a national audience versus a local one?
I don't know that it looks different per se. I think that all the issues I have seen as a local journalist, I still see those as a journalist working for a national publication. One of my goals is helping people outside this region better see and understand who we are and what we are. And if we're being honest, I hope that I can help people see that there are other regions that are newsworthy, not just, the region around the Beltway and not just the East Coast corridor. And so my goal is not to, I don't see this area any differently. I just see myself as trying to get other people to see it.
Jarvis DeBerry is opinion editor at MS Now. Jarvis, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Jarvis, before you go, real quick, so we have a segment on the show that we like to end with called Gulf States Gems. And it's really just this chance to brag and show some love to something we love about the region. So it could be anything, really, a restaurant, person, monument, state park, whatever. So I really want to know, what is Jarvis DeBerry's Gulf States Gem?
I am a huge fan of Community Book Center on Broad Street in New Orleans, and Vera Warren Williams, who is the owner of the store, and Mama Jen, Jennifer Turner, who is the life of the store if you walk in. And so that's a big gem of mine. And also, for nostalgic reasons, I really like taking the ferry out to Ship Island on the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Not enough people know about Ship Island. I feel like it's really just, it should get more attention than people give it.
It's a beautiful day trip to take.
This week's show is cooked up by the Gulf States Newsroom team. Our theme music is by DJ Supreme. Special thanks to our partner stations, WBHM, Mississippi Public Broadcasting, WWNO, and WRKF. You can find us in your podcast feeds every Friday. Look us up and be sure to subscribe. Again, I'm your host, Drew Hawkins. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to stir your roux.